Tuesday. So
Oh, happy anniversary, Ron and Alice.
yeah,
That's great.
he's put up with me all these years.
Happy anniversary. Well, welcome to the Contemporary Issues class here in December. And we are going to talk about Kamala Harris today with Ron Puning. Looking forward to learning more about her. And want to welcome everybody. Hello, Bob Williams. Nice to see you.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us today. Before we get started, we'll do the usual announcements. Please mute yourself. In the lower left corner of your screen is the microphone icon. If you click on that and mute yourself, that will help with the background noise. And we are recording this today for future playback. So this is your announcement on that. And please be kind in your comments to speaker and each other. And other announcements, Ron and Alice have a 47th wedding anniversary. Happy anniversary to them.
I have a birthday on Thursday.
Oh,
Oh.
happy birthday.
What, number 94?
That's correct.
All right.
94. That's awesome, Jim.
Going for 95.
Happy birthday.
Wow.
But
That's wonderful.
Whatever number I pass away at, I'm content. I've had a good life, so
Mhm.
That's a great thing to be able to say.
it would
Yeah.
be nice to get to 26. You know, to live in 2 centuries where I made the 26 number. That'd be
Oh.
100 years old.
What year were you on? Was it Saipan?
Pardon?
You were on one of the Japanese islands there in what, 1945?
Kyushu. We landed on the beaches there, you know, about a month after the atomic bombs. It was just like a regular invasion. We were fully armed and everything because we didn't know how the troops were going to react. You know, some of them were hardheads. But I
Thank you.
was lucky.
Okay.
Thank you for your service, of course, Jim, and everybody who served. Okay, next week, we're going to have a little Christmas party led by Alice and Vicky, and we'll see how that goes, a Christmas party on Zoom. So we'll just have fun and social time. And then the last Sunday, I thought we would just do a review of 2020, our recollections and feelings about this crazy year. So we will do that in 2 weeks. Okay, any other announcements or prayer concerns or news?
Well, on the subject of today, Kamala Harris, I Googled her name, and some interesting things came up, of which one of them was 55 things you need to know about her. And brief little things, both positive and negative, and just 3 of them quickly, which I think are important. Her parents divorced when she was 7 years old, so you know that would have an impact on her as a child. And as a child, she went both to a Black Baptist church and a Hindu temple. And she also visited India as a child, so she would know something about that country and its poverty and so on.
Yep, very good. Okay. And
All right.
Ron will of course give us time for discussion, and we'll bring up all those things. Thank you, Jim. Okay, Ron, thank you for another good topic here.
Okay. I thought it was very timely that Time Magazine made its announcement, I think Friday this week, of who they picked for Persons of the Year, and they picked Joe and Kamala. So that was kind of timely relative to our lesson today. Okay, some of the resources I use today. I always use the internet extensively, but 3 other sources I used heavily were her first major appearance on the cover of Time Magazine back in 2019 when she was one of many candidates, running for president. Her book, which is selling quite well, Kamala Harris, The Truths We Hold, and then a book by University Press. University Press tends to put out books on various political figures, so that was another useful one. Okay, quickly expounding on what Jim said, her heritage. Her mom was an Indian immigrant, and I may butcher a couple pronunciations, Shamala Gopalan. And she was from the University of India. She was working on a doctorate in nutrition and endocrinology at the University of California when she met Don Harris. So there's her parents. Again, her mom is the country of India, and her father is Jamaican in background. It's important to note that both of her parents were not poor sugarcane farm workers or something. Both of her parents were very educated. Her mom working on a PhD, and her dad also being a professor. So she's got a good intellectual heritage, shall we say. Her parents married before they graduated from college, and they had Kamala on October 20, 1964. Alice asked, are the U.S. citizens? The answer is yes, they are U.S. citizens now. Her dad is James Harris. He is still alive. He's retired, but he's been a professor at Stanford in the economics department and done a lot relative to economic studies. He's even consulted in his home area of Jamaica relative to economic advice. And they say he taught economics with a different point of view. He was very popular with the students, but he was also fairly controversial. His parents both took part in a lot of civil rights marches in the 60s, when the civil rights movement was so heavy and influential in the United States. They said that in his classes, Jim Harris would question his students. He'd ask students in class, can you explain why you think that? Or he was known for not letting students fall asleep in their chair, making them defend points and make comments and things like that. Kind of interesting. All right. So there's some pictures of him. Kamala has a younger sister, Maya, and Maya also has quite a resume. So again, both the parents were active in racial activism, attending marches and protests, and Kamala probably got pushed in a stroller in a few of the protest marches. In 1971, Jim Harris was offered a job as a professor at the University of Wisconsin. Kamala at that time was only 7 years old, and of course her little sister, Maya, was a bit younger. But at that time, her parents divorced. It was a pretty contentious divorce, but her mom ended up getting custody of the two girls. Also, as Jim mentioned, Kamala and Maya had a chance to visit relatives in both India and Jamaica as small children. Interestingly enough, not only was Kamala's mom a PhD, but her grandmother traveled rural areas of India, teaching girls and young women about childbirth and hygiene and birth control and things like that. Okay. Her younger sister, Maya, will probably be seen in the press. And there's a picture of her sister, Maya, with her husband, Tony West. Very handsome couple. And again, we'll probably hear more about Maya. She's a lawyer, public policy advocate, and a TV commentator. She's an analyst for MSNBC, and was appointed as one of the 3 senior policy advisors to Hillary Clinton. So her sister's got a political pedigree too. Kamala herself, at age 13, their mom moved them to Montreal, and they lived at least a couple of years, I believe, in Canada. When the apartment building they lived in Montreal didn't allow kids to play on the lawn out front, the 2 girls protested. They were kids that needed a place to play, and they led a demonstration, and they were successful in getting the policy changed so that kids could play on the lawn. Well, by the time Kamala was in high school, her mom moved them back to California, the Berkeley area, and Kamala decided to pursue a degree in both economics and political science. And Kamala went to Washington, D.C. to go to college, to the famous Howard University, and graduated from Howard in 1986, and then moved back to California to move in with her mom, sister, and young niece. She then went to, as a lot of people do, bounce from their undergraduate degree to law school. So she went to the California Hastings College of Law at UC, University of California. She graduated from law school in 1989 and passed the California bar exam in 1990. So again, there's her education. Howard University, 1986. University of California College of Law, 1989. Obviously, she's got some intellectual capability. Okay, her career progression. She started as a prosecutor in the district attorney's office in Alameda County, Oakland, California. So she got her early teeth busy in, shall we say, the law enforcement and law application area. District attorney office.
No, it wasn't us.
2003, she ran for district attorney in San Francisco against her former boss. That usually makes the boss a little bit upset. But she criticized her boss for having a relatively low conviction rate on the cases he had pursued. So she won the DA race. She at that time did date Willie Brown, who was much older than her, was San Francisco mayor. And Willie appointed her to 2 boards there in California. One was called the Unemployment Insurance Board, and the other the Medical Assistance Commission. And she earned an additional $80,000 working on these 2 boards. She got some criticism for getting appointments by her politically savvy older boyfriend. So, but Willie also introduced her to some of the big political people in San Francisco that were useful to get funds. Okay, in her district attorney experience, she was known as being doing well on a very tough job. She had to deal with teenage prostitutes, drug crimes, and some horrible violent crimes. I've got a picture on here of 2 other people that have political pedigrees that have been or are district attorneys. There's our very own George Brockler, who's stepping out, term limited, from our, is it the 18th Judicial District? And then from Minnesota, one of our favorite senators, Amy Klobuchar, who also worked as a district attorney in Minnesota. From what I've read and what I know, I'm told district attorney is a very important job. It's also a difficult job because you've got to successfully prosecute some really nasty people. You've also got to, you can't take every case to trial. You do have to offer plea bargains. Otherwise, the court system would literally get overwhelmed. So she was criticized for being more conservative, that's Kamala, than her very progressive predecessor, a gentleman by the name of Terrence Hallinan. And Harris campaigned against violent crimes and gangs when she was running to unseat her boss, and painted Hallinan, her opponent, as too weak on law and order. So she ran on a very strong law and order platform to get the DA. She worked hard trying to get teenage prostitutes treated more as victims and less as criminals. She was against the death penalty early and caught a lot of flack for that. In 2008, she refused to support California's Proposition 8, which banned same-sex marriage in California. It was later thrown out by the courts. And in an effort to reduce truancy in school, supported a measure which made parents criminally responsible when their children missed too many days of school. Okay, so she's now up to district attorney. And November 2010, she decides, actually a little before that, she decides to make a try for another higher office, that being Attorney General of California. Some of the criticism and some of the things that were immediately thrown against her as she ran for DA was the simple fact she was from San Francisco, Oakland, and that tag is put on people to say they're too liberal. But her DA record was actually, most people say, pretty conservative. Again, district attorneys have to bear down and apply the law. Her race and her gender were also used against her. So when you add those three things, the fact that she's a Black woman, she's a female, and she's from the San Francisco, Oakland area, a lot of people are going to automatically try to categorize her and push her into certain criticisms very quickly. She ran, it was a very, very close race there for California Attorney General in 2010. She beat a Los Angeles area Republican by the name of Steve Cooley, who was very popular. And she won by 0.8%, and she overtook him by the counting of the later arriving ballots. And interestingly enough, politics has strange bedfellows, as they say. She won her second election and received contributions that time from both Ivanka and Donald Trump. How's that for? Yeah.
That is ironic.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. During her periods, she served as Attorney General, 2011 to 2016, and that's a pretty good run. She fought to prosecute some firms that did some naughty things during the financial crisis. She was criticized for maybe not coming down hard enough on One West Bank, and the bank president at that time was Steve Mnuchin, who's right now Secretary of the Treasury, I believe.
Yeah.
So she also didn't have a real strong record on police accountability. In other words, she was hardly a defund the police person. She did not support a bill requiring all attorney generals to appoint a special prosecutor whenever there was a police use of deadly force. She initially opposed enforcing a law requiring all police to wear body cameras. And she did not support either of two initiatives to ban the death penalty. She apparently changed her mind on the death penalty. She was at first against it, but they feel now that she's somewhat in support of it. Okay, here's a very crowded chart, and I'm just going to summarize a little bit of it. Right after the 2008-2009 recession, as I'll call it, quite a bit of blame was put on banks. And she hit the ground running, doing investigations of them. A Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission reported in January 2011, many mortgage lenders took borrowers' qualifications on faith without a examination whether they could pay. There was even something here called a ninja loan, which said no income, no assets, which eliminated the need to prove or even to state any own assets. All that was required for a mortgage was a credit score. So clearly a lot of the big financial institutions, such as Countrywide Financial and Washington Mutual, had virtually no, they were just throwing out mortgages right and left. Ninja mortgages, not needing any documentation to back up
I better watch out.
those sort of things. Okay. Okay, there's the death penalty, by the way. You can see the there's no death penalty in the states in blue. There's essentially a suspension of the death penalty in the states in purple, and the states in red have the death penalty. Okay. All right. So now she's been district attorney for many years. She's been state of California, just DA, or not DA, but Attorney General for several years. 2016, she decided to run for Senate in California with the retirement of Barbara Boxer. So she ran for Senate in 2016, and she gained a lot of attention during an address she gave to the 2012 Democratic National Convention. If you read Barack Obama's book, he also got an awful lot of attention by simply making an address at a national convention. If you could really go on the big TV screen, the national convention, and make a good speech, it can certainly propel your political career. In her personal life, she married in 2014 Doug Emhoff. He's a Jewish lawyer, and it was his second marriage, but her first. So she was in her late 40s when she married Doug, but apparently it's a very good marriage, and they're very happy together, from the Turtles song. As she made it into the Senate, she called for immigration reform, criminal justice reform, minimum wage increase, more protection for women. And she joined the Senate Committee on Intelligence, Senate Budget, Homeland and Security, Environmental Affairs, and Judiciary Committees. So she's had quite a bit of, at least 4 years now, of Senate experience on several of the key committees. She's been known in the Senate as being a tough questioner. If you're coming into the Senate for a hearing, or a confirmation hearing, or other kind of hearing, from her district attorney experience, she's very good at quote, grilling and working over people testifying. And she's made a lot of people being questioned feel a bit uncomfortable. She questioned Brett Kavanaugh, William Barr, Jeff Sessions, and Mark Zuckerberg with what they call Perry Mason intensity. Okay, on the other side of the coin, she can be a tough cookie, but she's also got a pretty good sense of humor. There's a picture of her practicing some cheerleader exercises with some high school kids she visited. And you can see, if you watch her on a debate, you can see that she's not a, quote, hard as nails kind of person. She's got a good sense of humor. She can laugh. She can smile. That's good. She also gets along extremely well with Doug, her husband's 2 children from a previous marriage. She also has a good relationship with Doug's ex. Doug had a relatively smooth divorce compared to some people. So she's very close to her stepkids. And as we move on here, she put her hat in the ring for the presidency. As we all know, she was one of the first ones to get in. January of 2019, announced on Good Morning America that she was going to make a run for it, along with at least 29 others. And as you may have seen on TV, in one of the early debates, she put some tough questions to Joe Biden, criticized him. She was, however, unable to break out of the pack. There were so many horses in the Democratic field that it was hard for any one person to break out. The critics said she was not able to get a good single message out to her supporters and break away from the pack. So she ended up suspending her campaign in December of 2019. For those of you that have read Doris Goodwin's book, Team of Rivals, Lincoln had gone out and deliberately put some people in his cabinet that were same party political rivals. People like Seward, a gentleman from Missouri, and Staunton, I believe it was, from Ohio. A good book and well worth reading, whatever your political persuasion. This is about Lincoln. And Lincoln wanted people in his cabinet that would tell him what he needed to hear. He didn't want yes men or yes women just nodding their heads to whatever he said. And so this was kind of an interesting aspect of the Harris-Biden combination. Harris had not hesitated to criticize Joe in the debates, and yet he had no hard feelings. He didn't lash out at her, or he ended up choosing her to be a vice president. So I think that's a positive thing. We'll move along here. We want to leave time for questions, but some of her strengths, both parents very smart and educated. I think it helps to have parents that aren't dummies. She's got a personal, multiracial, and multinational experience, background, and heritage. I think that's good to lead a country that's very diverse. She had to struggle and work for success, and she had to overcome sexual and racial prejudice and barriers. So she wasn't born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Growing up as a kid, she lived in some pretty small apartments. And as I've got a picture here of Johnny Rivers, who I heard at Hudson Gardens a good 10 years ago, but he cut a song, The Poor Side of Town. And I've always liked that song. Having grown up myself with a family of 6 living in a house of less than 800 square feet, I can empathize with some of that song. So she's also got a sense of empathy, humor, and justice. She's married now. She has a sibling. She's got a couple stepkids, and she went through the experience of having to suffer through a parental divorce as a kid. And she was courageous enough to criticize Joe Biden in the debate, yet did not alienate him, clearly. Given high grades, a successful DA, and also has taken on some, as a DA, she recognized that she had to attack some of the key problems. So she actually, as a DA, set up a program to attack the root causes of crime issues, and set up a program to put in some criminals who hadn't done violent things to try to rehabilitate them. She also tried some rehabilitation work with some teenage girls that had been sexually exploited. And also she's tried to combat the dropouts status of so many who drift into crime young. There's a couple of pictures of hers being an activist. There's Doug in his tennis shoes, and can see she's clicking her fingers, it looks like. They're jumping off a bus. Here they're participating in a San Francisco LBGT Pride Parade. And here's a picture of her marching in a Martin Luther King march. So that's certainly an aspect of her character. Some of her positions, when California Proposition 22 passed in 2000, it prohibited same-sex marriage, and Kamala fought this, and it was finally ruled unconstitutional by the California Supreme Court. Kamala actually did the marriage ceremonies for these two ladies in California who the case to the Supreme Court was based on. And she married them in City Hall, I think it says there, in June of 2013. Also, there was California Proposition 8, which prohibited same-sex marriage, and that was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2013. As an attorney general, she targeted for-profit college scams such as the Corinthian colleges. Corinthian was and still is the largest collapse of an institution of higher education in American history. And it was basically I'll call it a fly-by-night kind of college set up that was ripping off people. So she was very aggressive in prosecuting them. Okay, she's very strong on the issue of immigration, and she spoke out very aggressively against the child separation policy that was put into effect by the Trump administration. She's very sympathetic to Dreamers and DACA. She supports DACA and a fair immigration policy. As California DA, she fought to make elementary school truancy more serious. She found, or I shouldn't say she found, but she brought to the attention that fourth grade is really critical, it turns out, to keep people from going the wrong direction in life. In fourth grade, students tend to shift more from, they tend to, at this time, start to use reading more to learn. And if they don't have a decent reading ability by about fourth grade, they're going to suffer in their education. You need to try to make sure kids can read reasonably well by fourth grade. She also pointed out that when they did a study in California in the 2000s, more than 80% of the prisoners were high school dropouts. So there's definitely an extremely strong education versus crime avoidance correlation. She pushed an initiative to reduce truancy in elementary school, and this reduced the school truancy rate in an area of California she applied it to by about 23%. She formulated a program called Back on Track to try to get nonviolent small crime offenders in a program to get them off drugs if needed and to develop a skill. So she's got some real good ideas to try to reduce crime by stopping it before it begins. Okay, she is supportive of quality and affordable childcare, supports smart infrastructure spending, and believes climate change is real and that steps are needed to combat it. There's a plot here showing the global mean temperature change, and we can see that it's going up. There's hardly any denying of that scientific reality. She's not in line with Trump. In 2017, the president appointed a man to run the Consumer Protection Agency that referred to the Bureau as a joke and said about dismantling it. Against the president who bragged about sexually assaulting women, mocked those with disabilities, race-baited, demonized immigrants, taxed Gold Star families. She certainly represents a position of tolerance and diversity. She supports the DACA program, and right now, if you're reading the news, a lot is happening there. Supreme Court has finally decided that they've got to put DACA back in place and reactivate it. And so you'll be hearing more of that. DACA, of course, has been suspended and was fought intensively by the current administration. So that has changed, and we need to watch the latest news on what happens with the Dreamers.
Still muted, aren't we?
Okay, well, we're almost to the discussion time here. Uh,
Not still muted? No, not yet.
Kamala made the statement, when you're the daughter of a scientist, scientist is a way of shaping how you think. And Kamala has also said, when presenting or preparing a case as a DA, we have to force ourselves to lay out our assumptions. We sometimes find that certain parts of our arguments have assumptions that shouldn't occur. And of course, I love these sayings by Carl Sagan. The truth may be puzzling, may be counterintuitive, it may contradict deeply held prejudices, it may not be consistent with what we desperately want to be true, but our preferences do not determine what's true. Okay, here we go. Okay, finally, my last slide. I like to say, does a candidate pass the Wizard of Oz test? There's a guy in my office at Raytheon who used to say, his parents had divorced, but he said, I wish my mom would have had one of the elements of the Wizard of Oz. And he said he felt the movie The Wizard of Oz had a moral lesson to it that said you needed to have all the attributes of the characters. And it's pretty clear what they are. The Scarecrow needed brains. The lion needed a heart. Courage, I'm sorry. And Tin Man. And then Dorothy needed to have the ability to get along with people and accept diversity. The fact that she had to get along with these three different characters, and then the Munchkins and all the other folks that show up in The Wizard of Oz. But this isn't a bad test for any person running for office to ask, do they have brains? That's the smarts. Do they have a heart? When we say a heart, we mean empathy and a thirst for justice. Do they have courage to stand up and do the right thing? And are they able to get along with a lot of other people? So I think it's also important not to put anybody up on a pedestal. Kamala is human like us. We don't worship her. We don't think that she's can do no wrong. But so far, it looks like she passes the Wizard of Oz test pretty well. And it'll be interesting to see where she goes in the future. And as they say, time will tell. So let's turn it over to the group here and get back to the screen and open it up. Comments on Kamala?
Ron, I haven't read or heard from her anything about abortion. What's her, since that's such a big mover in elections among the populace, what are her views on abortion?
Kamala takes very strong positions on women's rights. So she therefore strongly supports the right of a woman to have a legal abortion.
Thank you.
Mute. Mute.
What is her faith now? You said she was Baptist, and do you know what she?
I'm not sure if she's attending any particular church on a regular basis. She has a mixed background. She grew up, of course, being exposed to both Baptist and Hindu beliefs, and her husband is Jewish. I don't know, but we can't make assumptions about a person's faith necessarily based on where they were at age 10 or 12. So I don't know what her faith preferences are.
I can share a little bit about that I just looked up this morning, just in news reports. It said she does consider herself a Baptist still. And when running for president last year during the primaries, she often used the New Testament parable of the Good Samaritan. She said, Jesus tells the parable about the outsider who helps a man beaten and left on the side of the road. She said this helped clarify to her who the neighbor is. She said, neighbor's not about having the same zip code. What we learn in the parable is that neighbor is someone you are walking by on the street. It's anyone else you are living near or seeing and understanding each other as brothers and sisters. In other speeches, Harris has invoked liberation theology, the strain of Christian thought that emphasizes social concern for the poor and political liberation for oppressed peoples. Harris said justice is on the ballot, just as economic justice and healthcare justice are on the ballot. We should be helping all those and see them as our neighbors. So that's a little bit reported in the press about her religious comments.
Thank you.
Ron,
Go ahead.
What do you think about the criticism of her as being too liberal, and that some outlets have called her the most liberal member of the Senate?
I haven't looked at what criteria they used to make that decision, but I would say she's liberal. Yeah. I don't know if she's the most liberal, but she definitely has a liberal perspective.
Of the Democrats, does she fall? She doesn't fall into the overly progressive group, though, does she?
No. Interestingly enough, she aligns with Joe Biden on a lot, and I think that's why he picked her. Because, for example, Joe Biden does not believe in right now pushing universal health care. Joe has said that it's a good idea to work towards, and we can make stepping stone approaches to it. But politically, it doesn't look like it's viable right now. It just won't go over. There's just not enough momentum to carry the day with it.
Also, given her law and order background, moves her closer to the middle.
Yeah. Again, as you look at her work as a district attorney, she's pretty strong law and order.
Yeah, she was quick to move to the middle once Joe appointed or chose her as his vice president candidate. She wasn't pushing anything that was too far to the left that would disrupt the ticket.
Didn't she remove quite a few people from prison? More, I don't know exactly what that was about, but a number of people that she wanted to get the prisons and jails a little more empty. We've got too many people in prison. I don't really remember all that well to know what she was really
I
about.
think generally in all states right now have made somewhat of an attempt to try to reduce their prison populations.
Yeah. But I mean in California.
In California, and she has tried to get some of the people that were in there for nonviolent drug crimes like smoking pot or
Yeah.
distributing pot, rehabbed and put back into society. I think every state is attempting to do that to a great degree. The cost of incarcerating a person is extremely high. Extremely high. And if you go to maximum security, it gets, I'm told it costs more to incarcerate someone in maximum security than it does to send somebody to an Ivy League university for a year.
Second Chance Center says that that's somewhere in the vicinity of $34,000 a year in Colorado.
Okay.
That does not include the cost of the facilities. That's just the direct cost of maintaining each prisoner.
Okay.
One of the reasons the Senate doesn't want to approve marijuana, that means all those people that were convicted of a federal crime on marijuana would be set free. Colorado is starting to set our people free because we now recognize it. I'd like to comment real quick on the death penalty. The death penalty costs an average of $1 million per year to defend that case, and it takes a minimum of 10 years in defending that case. And in Colorado, the cost is borne by the county in which the person was prosecuted. And Colorado gave up on that because these counties cannot afford that $1 million a year cost for the next minimum of the next 10 years. And Wisconsin did that too, all based on cost. It costs more to defend the case than if you lock the person up for life.
Wow.
How does Kamala Harris feel about the people that come across the border illegally and they commit crimes and they get stopped by the police, but they just get their fingers slapped, more or less? I mean, I don't know how that all works, but
She
some
does.
people,
She believes in enforcing immigration laws.
she does.
Yes.
Yeah. And if a guy has been deported once and he comes back again, how does she react to that?
I don't know that degree of detail.
No.
If you want to look it up, Obama sent back more people back across the border for crimes than Trump did.
Yeah, Harris to me seems like an interesting mix of law and order toughness and liberal policies and desires too. So I'm just guessing she wouldn't always be easy to predict where she's going to fall on an issue.
I've never really heard her talk very much. I mean, when she comes out there with Biden, he talks, but she always stands there. I've never heard her talk, but
Well, she was good in the debate with Pence. There was the vice president debate.
oh yeah, she
And
was.
She really defended herself well, quick on her feet, good debater.
Well, that's true. I remember that. She is. Yeah.
To follow up on Steve's point, she follows the rule of law and believes that the laws should be followed, but also has a strong sense of humanity to put into the mix.
The rule of the vice president is changing. Have you been watching the documentary about that? Recently, they go all the way from I can't think of the first president they start, but it's been about the last 5 presidents, and they focus on the role of the vice president and how much more assistance to the president that they are. And so there's
Mondale, Judy.
what was it?
On CNN.
Mondale.
Oh, yeah. That
Does
was
she have
interesting,
any
wasn't it?
children? Oh, go ahead.
That was interesting, wasn't it? To find,
Yeah.
just see, yeah.
Yeah.
They started with Mondale. Yeah, you're right. Mhm.
The thing that I saw, and I can't remember what station it was or anything like that, but that Biden's relationship with Obama was that he would be first in the room before any making meetings, and he would be the last one to leave the room. And according to what I saw, that Biden and Harris have both worked out a deal that would be basically the same thing, that she would be in on all decision making and be the first in the room and the last one out of the room. And I think that's really important. You know, one of the things that a lot of people are downplaying is the fact that Joe Biden is 78 years old and has some history of medical problems. The pressures of the presidency is certainly not small or anything like that. So I think that looking at Harris as to whether she would be fit to assume the role of the big chair, I think is extremely important at this point.
I think it is too. Very, very important. Mhm.
This is a little off the topic, but what's come out the last couple of days about Jill Biden being criticized for being called Dr. Biden? Have you all heard that?
What?
Because she's not a medical doctor, she shouldn't be able to be called doctor in the press, even
Oh
though she
my
has a
God.
PhD. That came out yesterday. And I can't remember who criticized
But you mean Biden's wife?
Yes.
Jill Biden.
Well,
Mhm.
she has a degree, she has a doctorate degree in education.
Yes, but she's being criticized because she's using the name doctor when she's not a medical doctor.
Well, she's still a doctor. I mean,
I agree. I'm just saying
Yeah.
what's out there in the news right now.
Oh, I see.
Professors
Okay.
go by doctor all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So anyway, listen to the commentary over the next couple of days. It'll be right in the front of everything.
Oh, okay.
It
Mhm.
is a social question. I assumed for a while that she was a medical doctor just because I heard her referred to as Dr. Biden.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think a lot of us make assumptions like that.
Yeah, I think that's the predominant impression. When someone's a doctor, you think medical doctor, you don't think PhD.
As someone who has a PhD, that's not uncommon, that people immediately assume that when you're referred to as doctor that you've got a medical degree, but it's also very common, well, almost universal, that everybody with the PhD is referred to as doctor.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Roger.
Thank you, Dr. Frame.
It should be.
I
They
just,
had-
I just thought if they're going to criticize her for that, forget it. I mean,
Forget it is right.
They're
There's
searching
another
for
role
things
that
that'll
we
stick.
There's no role we ought to think that she's gonna be. She's the person that presides over the Senate. And I think that's one of the reasons why Biden wanted her as the vice president. You know she's gonna have something to say in that position to the Senate.
Hmm.
Even if she doesn't have to vote for over a tie, but she will be there.
Hmm.
Probably more so than Pence was.
We've
Pence
got
was
5
the
minutes,
yeah.
5 minutes left, especially if anybody would like to comment that hasn't commented. Don't hesitate. Just go ahead and unmute yourself and share your thoughts with us, please. That's okay. Anybody go ahead.
By the way, for people that aren't familiar, at least on a Mac, to unmute yourself on these, you can just press the, not the shift bar, the space bar, and it will unmute you. You don't have to find the mute thing to unmute.
Oh,
And then when you let up on the space bar, it'll put you back into muted status.
oh, mhm. Okay.
A comment on Joe Biden's age and the possibility that she might ascend to the presidency. That was one of the more late criticism or late points the conservatives were bringing up to vote for Donald versus Joe was that if you vote for Biden, you are basically voting for a Black woman to be president in 2024. So
Yeah, I think so. I
it's
mean,
kind
I've heard that and I believe that's in the plan. Kind of, yeah.
it was kind of a very racist
Well,
thrust, I thought, and
I
nobody.
want a Black woman to be the president.
There's talk that after 3 years, Joe will step down and she'll become the 47th president
Yeah.
Yeah.
in his last year. And that's probably not a bad move.
I'm preparing a lesson for January called Mississippi Burning. It's based on the book and the movie of that title. But one thing that's still very unsettling about our country, about 37% of Mississippi is Black folks. And if you look at the vote in Mississippi, not this last election, but last time Obama ran, 90% of the white folk in Mississippi voted against Obama. Now, you know, that certainly says we've got a big problem in some areas with people automatically, because of their geopolitical location, voting automatically a certain way just based on race. And that's not good for America. We still have a long way to go in terms of people accepting women and minorities.
Well,
One thing that's in the news is that the two largest counties in Georgia are cutting the places to vote by 50%.
That is illegal.
Jim Watson, go ahead.
some people cannot accept the fact that we are going to have a colored majority of the populace. They just cannot accept that, but it's true. It's coming. You know,
It's very close. I mean, yeah.
And to be against it is like shoveling against the tide, which is an old Navy expression. You know, when you look at the world population, you know, it's mostly of color.
Yeah, the whites are in the minorities.
We've been integrating since the first, when they stopped carrying clubs.
Yeah.
It's 11:30, everybody. Thank you, Ron, for such a good presentation, and everybody, a good discussion.
Thank you very much. It was interesting.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Bye.
Another
Bye.
good presentation. Any final thoughts?
What's next week, Stephen?
Party.
Next week is our Christmas party. We're gonna do a little,
Colorful stuff.
what, Alice?
Wear colorful sweaters.
Wear your colorful Christmas sweater. If you have an ugly Christmas sweater, wear that, and we will just do a social time and share our thoughts about this year. And Ron and Alice and Vicky have games for us to play. So we'll just see how a virtual Christmas party goes.
We'll give a prize for the ugliest sweater.
Right.
There will be prize.
We'll probably see more Christmas trees. That'll be nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, here I go.
Okay, let's pray for the country this week and for everybody. And we'll see you next week. Thank
Okay.
you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, Ron.
I know.